thing for me was 1933, born in Decatur. And my first home, when I came home from the hospital, was right across from the Millikin Homestead at 124 North Pine. The homestead is 125 North Pine, is its permanent address. So I literally absorbed the atmosphere of the homestead as a child, not even realizing it. When I was in my little bassinet out on the curbside on Pine Street, I could look over the Millikin Homestead, and there it was, and I didn't know what it was, of course.
Yeah.
So time went on, and I grew up on Millikin Place because in 1934, the person who owned our house, number 5 Millikin Place, a gentleman named Oscar Dawson, became a widower and had too much house here. My parents had this little humble cottage or bungalow on Pine Street, and so they traded houses and then paid Mr. Dawson the difference. And I have been here it's been my permanent address now for 87 years. First year was Pine Street. When my parents bought the little house on Pine Street, the realtors tried to sell them the Powers Jarvis mansion, which was the biggest house in Decatur. And my dad had just gotten his dream job as head of the grain department at A.E. Staley Company, buying all the grain for the Staley Company, and he was hired by A.E. Sr. And so all the realtors thought, well, he should have a house that was commensurate with his position. So instead of the Powers Jarvis mansion, they had this cute little greenhouse across from the homestead, which is still there. It's suffered over the years from a little neglect, but it's still there, and so am I. The Millikin Homestead and Millikin Place are inseparably joined by history. When Millikin Place was developed in 1910, they had to get land to complete the street from Anna Millikin. Now, James had died in 1909, but Anna was still there living in the homestead. And she had to approve the entrances and into Millikin Place to make the street work. So Anna was complicit with our street from the very beginning. The people who developed Millikin Place were industrialists from Decatur. Most of them connected with the Ferries Manufacturing Company. Adolph and Robert Mueller, E.P. Irving, Bill Grady. These are all people who had business dealings together. They put together Millikin Place, and first they didn't call it Millikin Place. They called it, what was it, Prairie, I can't think of the name, but Prairie something or other. And eventually it became Millikin Place, and giving honor to the fact that it was all Millikin land to begin with. All of Millikin Place and much of West William Street to our north was all owned by James Millikin, and he had paid a hefty sum for the acreage. Some of it was then sold to the railroad, something St. Louis and something, and then purchased back, I believe, in the fullness of time. And he subdivided all of this. And so between James Millikin and a fellow by the name of Hogringer Hill, or more formally Hugh Hill, sold the rest of the land on the north side of West Millikin Place to the people who developed it. It was laid out as a unique street, certainly for Decatur in central Illinois. The landscaping was done by Walter Burley Griffin, who designed Canberra, Australia, from the ground up. It was 3 houses were commissioned from Frank Lloyd Wright's studio in Oak Park. Later completed in his absentia when he went to Europe, when he ran away from his practice to Germany with his consort, the wife of one of his customers, They ran off together and abandoned their children in Oak Park. When all this was done, the commissions for the Millikin Place houses went from Wright to one of his disciples, Marion Mahoney, the first woman licensed to practice architecture in Illinois, in the country, in fact, and that probably means the world, because in Europe they were not licensing lady architects at the time, as far as I know. I could be corrected on that. But Marion Mahoney graduated from MIT, class of 1893 or 1892, 1893. And she came to Chicago and worked in the studio of her cousin Dwight Perkins, and then was hired by Frank Lloyd Wright to head his drafting studio in the Oak Park studio in Oak Park, Illinois. So Marion Mahoney and Walter Burley Griffin are the ones who completed Wright's commissions in Decatur, and their houses still stand here. They are really very significant examples of the Prairie School of Architecture. So there's Millikin Place. It originally had 4 houses on the north side of the street, and then by 1921 the 5th house was added, which is our house. Number 5 Millikin Place was the next house added on the street. So you have this very significant historic street in American architectural history, and really even beyond that, internationally known. All this coming together with Anna Millikin making it possible through her permission to use her land. And one of the interesting things is that the people who developed Millikin Place were not thinking of the future of what is now the Millikin Homestead. They were thinking of, in the fullness of time, the Millikin Homestead will probably cease to exist, and they wanted to control the redevelopment of the Millikin land. I think they were ready to purchase it if the opportunity came. The opportunity never came because Anna left her property with the stipulation that the house always be basically maintained, not destroyed. And to fulfill the plan of the people who developed Millikin Place, the homestead would have to be removed. Well, it never was. But to prove the point, up until recently, there were masonry pillars out on the entrance to the homestead off of West Main Street. Those pillars have been removed now, but they were the material of the same entrance, same brick, same limestone capstone that crowns the entrance to Millikin Place. So they had already gotten Mrs. Millikin's permission to put up an entrance on West Main Street that really correlated more with Millikin Place than it did with the Millikin Homestead. Originally there were wrought iron gates on the entrance to Millikin Place. Those still exist, we still have those. But the pillars that the Millikin Place residents put up have been removed, and we've used them here on our street for repair of damages and things of that sort to our lighting, the masonry from our lighting system. So the two entities, the homestead and Millikin Place, are really conjoined forever, or at least relatively forever. We hope forever.